Three, two, one. Hey everybody, shagheads, buzzheads, zoinkers, all you guys out there. It is Curtis Tucker, aka Shags, for another episode of the Curtis Tucker podcast. Thanks for checking in. Appreciate you guys. If you're listening on your favorite podcasting app, don't forget I am over on YouTube as well. You guys can watch the podcast over there. And if you're watching me on YouTube, I also upload this to all of the most popular podcasting apps. So if you guys are driving, doing laundry, or a plethora of other stuff, you can check out the podcast there. Hit me up at curtis@curtistucker.com or shags@shaggyduck.com. Send me an email. Oh, heck. And Gretchen sent me a great email about not letting the old lady in after my not letting the old man in episode, and went through a lot of the things that she's doing as well. And I don't have that in front of me, but thanks for sending that in, Gretchen. I appreciate it. And I'll get that in front of me on the next episode. This episode tonight, I wasn't quite sure what I was going to do this week, and I was just sitting here thinking, what would be some good podcasting ideas. And then I got to thinking about a shop that I've been thinking about, and I thought, so I started getting a lot of ideas for this shop that I've been thinking about, and I thought, well, why don't I turn my ideas of doing that shop into a podcast episode. So this podcast episode is going to be about a possible retail retro shop thing that would be fun to create in the future. I don't know if it would ever happen, but if it did, these are some of the ideas that I have. And so this would be, probably be in Enid. And one of the things that got me thinking is, I just went up to the 30th anniversary of the movie Twister up in Waukeeta. And I mean, there was 1,000 or probably more on Saturday, a couple thousand people up there. And there's nothing in Waukeeta, nothing to do there, nothing. But the people flocked there. And I know it was just a once, it's kind of a once a year deal, but people did go. They went there just to hang out and be with other people. And then they keep having these anniversaries in Astoria, Oregon, where they filmed Goonies. And there's other cities that have these places where people go because of a movie or a TV show or, something like that. And so I'm getting a lot of sorry about that. I was getting a lot of flashing from the Godzilla King Kong movie that was going on behind me on the television. So I turned it off so I won't be flashing for you guys. So that's why I had the quick pause there if you're not watching. So I have this idea of what if I opened this shop in Enid, Oklahoma, and made it so cool that even though it's in Northwest Oklahoma and there's not a lot around, that people would come here from all over the world just to come and say they came to the shop. Now, for that to happen, it would have to be a pretty cool shop. I mean, it would have to be something for a niche audience, have stuff that people really loved, and it'd just have to be pretty special. So my idea would be to get a building, and it would be almost like part retail store, part museum, part gallery, part, I don't know, just a whole bunch of stuff. So That's what, so let's talk about it. And so I've got some notes here and I've got some things in my head, some things that I would have in it. So basically, what we're talking is a big, cool retail store, a retro shop, something like Zoinkies Retro Fun Shop, a pop culture time machine for the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And so basically, that's what I would concentrate on. Everything in the store would be centered around the 60s, 70s, and 80s. It would be for that baby boomer, Generation Jones, Generation, or yeah, Generation Jones and Gen X, kind of that whole section there for all those people that grew up in that time. And the main part of it, of the Zoinkies, retail shop, would be to have retro stuff like old lunchboxes, lava lamps, beanbag chairs, banana seat bikes, comic books, dodgeballs, frisbees. I'd have all kinds of fun stuff. You could have $6 Million Man lunchboxes, Scooby Doo, stuff from the show, Star Wars things all over the place. You could have trading cards for Star Wars, Charlie's Angels, baseball cards, football cards, basketball cards, all from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So it would be kind of a retail collector's shop, but would have all this cool stuff, and more than just being a store, it would be an experience. So for the people that lived through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, especially if you were young, it would be nostalgia going back in time. For the people that weren't raised and didn't grow up in that time, it would be a cool look back at what it was like. And so the whole store, the whole shop, would be almost more of an experience than a shopping. It's almost like people talk about going to Buc-ee's. Buc-ee's is this huge, huge convenience store, and you don't really go to Buc-ee's just to get gas and get a candy bar. You're going for the experience, the overall size of it, all the things that are in it, the things that you can eat, the stuff you can buy. It's an experience. And so this store, the Zoinkies Fun Shop, would be an experience. And hopefully you could make it so cool, so retro, so nostalgic that people would come. And then and part of it, the part of museum would be that there might be some things that wouldn't be for sale, but they would be iconic things from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that are framed or behind glass that, are on display, that people, you might be able to get things from movies that were filmed, like something like Harry's hat from Jaws, Bad Hat Harry. What if you could get a prop like that, or, something from Close Encounters or Phantasm, and have these things on display in the shop, around the shop, to make it part museum, part nostalgia, but also have a ton of stuff, a whole collection of, alarm clocks with Snoopy on them, and things like that people could buy. So that's kind of the idea. The big main idea is part nostalgia of things they could buy, but then part nostalgia of things that they could just look at. Again, it would be decorated to look like you step back in time. You would have the avocado green, you would have the browns, the gold, the turquoise, the hot pinks, oranges, the electric blue. You might have some appliances like a stove or a refrigerator, but you hollow them out. And somebody opens a avocado green refrigerator and there's something in there, a whole collection of GI Joes, or I don't know, but everything, all the displays and everything in the store are themed to be retro and groovy. And for me, I would probably have to have a little surf, you know, 60s, 70s surf section with some really cool surfboards, things from that whole surfing vibe. Maybe a couple surfboards hanging from the ceilings. Now, even though I think pedal cars were further back, we still rode around in pedal cars in the 60s, 70s. So, you'd have pedal cars maybe hanging from the ceiling or for sale on the floor. Yo-yos, Viewmasters, mood rings, clackers, pet rocks. It just would go on and on and on. And, the fun part too would be just finding the stuff to fill it with, going to estate sales and garage sales and having people send you things, and maybe have people travel from other states just to drop off boxes of stuff. And maybe, you pay them a price for bringing the stuff to you, and then, you sell it there. But the whole store is just this huge retro nostalgic experience. And if this is sounding like such a super cool idea, somebody's thinking they're going to try it, don't try it without me. If you're going to try it, get a hold of me and let's work on it together, even though your version might not be in Enid, but I don't know, because I've got this vision, and without my vision, it's not going to work. I mean, I can tell you all day, what I'm telling you in this podcast episode, but without seeing it in my head, it's not going to work. So don't do it without me. So now here's some of the cool sections that it would have besides just the retail and the museum things. And it would be a vinyl record section. It could be a whole cool record shop. You could have, Fleetwood Mac and Boston and Foreigner and Black Sabbath and 45s. You could have all the cool 45s with bubblegum rock and just tons and tons of stuff. The Cars, Van Halen, Journey, REO, Styx, Heart, just album after album. You could have some new albums. They do some re-releases so people could get some brand new vinyl, but you'd have a lot of old vinyl, not really trashed vinyl. You'd want to keep it, everything that you had in the store, kind of on the upper end of condition. You'd have maybe a couple cool turntables with headphones that people could listen to the albums on before they buy them. Think how cool that would be to go into a retro fun shop, pick out an album, be able to plop it on the turntable, put on your big Koss headphones, and listen to the album before you walked out of the store. It would also I'd have a little section of 8 tracks and cassettes. And I guess if we're going to go into the 80s, maybe some CDs of some 80s music. Mostly albums though, but it would be cool to have, some old 8-track players, portable ones that people could buy, or cassette players. You could actually even make mixtapes and write on the cassettes and sell them, to people that might still have cassette players or sell a cassette player. I know there's a lot of new portable cassette players that have come on the market. And so just having that nostalgia. Now, you could try to sell old cassette players, but then you could also have a section where you sell new ones. The point being that you're selling, even though it's not retro or vintage, you're selling it because you want people to be able to play the cassettes. So anyway, there would be that whole music section. And then there would be a t-shirt section, and that would be cool because what you could do is it would be this section would be all brand new t-shirts. Is you could have all vintage retro designs. You could take sayings and old commercials and old items. You might have to get licensing for some of the stuff, or you could do parodies. You could do, just sayings and stuff, and just the shape and the designs on the t-shirts could look retro, and just having a word or two on them. You could have groovy roadside attractions on the t-shirt designs. You could have stickers in that section as well, old 70s stickers, cartoon mascots, all tie-dye. You could have somebody create you a whole line of tie-dye t-shirts. You could have sayings on them like "We ate candy for breakfast in the '70s," "Saturday morning professional," "Powered by Pop Rocks and arcade tokens." And it would be cool because it would be all brand new T-shirts. Another section I would have would be just a small section. You wouldn't want it to take up a whole lot of room, but it would be a little corner arcade. And I would definitely try to have 4 games in that little arcade, and it would cost you, a quarter to play, and then you might have to put timers on there if somebody got on there. If somebody new came in, they could hit a timer, or you just have to get off and let the next person on your time. But there'd be a pinball machine, there'd be an asteroid machine, there'd be a Pac-Man machine, and there'd be a Galaga. And those would be my definite 4. I'm sure we could throw something else in there, Donkey Kong or Centipede, if we couldn't get a hold of one of the other ones. But wouldn't that be kind of cool? And you wouldn't be trying to make a full-on arcade. It would just be this one little corner. People could come in that have the memories of playing those games. They could play them. Kids that have never played an actual stand-up arcade game where you plug the quarter in, they could play them. I think that corner would be super, super duper popular. Another section would be a comic book section. I've got, 200 comic books right now to start off the whole collection. They would be in plastic sleeves, all fairly nice. Comic books, Spider-Man, superheroes, Superman, Batman, Fantastic Four, Sad Sack, all the comic books from the 60s and 70s and 80s. I think that'd be really cool. Another, going back real quick to the lunch boxes. I know it's kind of cool when you're a collector to have like a pristine lunch box and a thermos and all that, but I've got some lunch boxes. I got this one lunch box, and I know exactly who owned it because this kid etched his name in the metal on the box. And so it's lunch boxes like that have a story. I've thought about checking out his name and see if I could track him down and see if he remembers when he got rid of the lunch box. But so not everything in the store you'd want to be brand new. You want it to be used and again have a carved name on the lunchbox. And so these comic books, a lot of them are going to be a little rough, and maybe you don't ever take them out of the sleeve. Maybe some of them are framed and you hang them on a wall just because that was your favorite comic book when you were a kid, and in your office you want to hang it up on the wall. So you got this whole section of comic books. Another section is a candy section. Imagine going in and you're hanging out playing the arcade game and shopping for some retro stuff, and you get a little bit hungry and you look over and there's a whatchamacallit and some Razzles and candy cigarettes and a Charleston Chew, Bit of Honey, Lemon Heads, Boston Baked Beans, Atomic Fire, Chico Sticks, Pixie Sticks, Fun Dips, wax bottles, Zeros, bottle caps, Pop Rocks, just everything, in this one section. Of course, all of it's new candy because some of the candy they still sell, but then some of them they've come back and they sell it because it's retro candy. But a whole section of retro candy. Think how cool that would be. Think about the gift ideas that somebody, if they had a dad or an uncle or a brother that was like, just loved the 60s, 70s, 80s, and they could travel to the store and buy them. My idea is to have, they could get them, buy them a lunchbox, one of these metal lunch boxes, and go around the store and stuff it with retro candy and baseball cards and a GI Joe and whatever would fit in the box, in the metal lunchbox, and then they wrap that up and they give that as a present. So somebody that grew up in the 70s opens up their favorite metal lunchbox and it's got all their favorite candy in it and all these cool trinkets and toys and things that they had when they were a kid. Think how cool that would be. Another thing about this store is it doesn't necessarily have to be just where you buy it, things from Enid, Oklahoma. We could have, a lot of the stuff online. But again, the whole point, I think, of the coolness of the store would be to go in and be able to hang out and touch and see all this stuff and flip through. So here's another section, a magazine rack with old magazines from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Think about sitting there and flipping through old TV guides and Reader's Digest and Cosmopolitan and Playboy and Sports Illustrated, Popular Mechanics, 17, Tiger Beat, Life, Rolling Stone, all these cool magazines that you could have on display there, and people could come in and check them out and look at the old ads and just, I think that would be cool. So that would be one of the sections. Another section would be kind of a poster section where you have probably a combination of old vintage posters, but then you maybe have some reproduction posters, but you've got your pinup girls, you got your rock stars, you'd have your black light posters. You could also sell black lights and, like I said, lava lamps and incense. Think how cool that would be to go into the section with the black light posters and there be a whole section of incense in there. If you could find some Farrah Fawcett posters, Cheryl Tiegs, Dallas Cowboys, Kiss, Star Wars, Rocky, Bruce Lee, Pink Floyd, Led Zeppelin, all of the old, things from the 70s, dragons and wizards, surfers, skateboarders, anybody that had an interest in something retro, there'd be a couple of posters there for you. And again, have some of them framed. And people take these and hang them, they hang them in their home. They hang them in their man cave, in their garage, in their studio, in their office at work, and all this stuff. Another section, games and toys. Think about finding an old Rebound or a Stratego or a You Sank My Battleship or the Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Some of those toys they still make. Think about the cool section of Hot Wheels and Mattel Matchbox cars and Stretch Armstrong, Evel Knievel on his little motorcycle, Star Wars figures. You could have Slinkies, yo-yos, again, clackers, cheap plastic toys. You could have stuffed animals from back in the day. Got to have a whole section of troll dolls. Think how cool that would be. Kids today would love to get in there. A couple of Twister games, a Monopoly, Life, Clue, Sorry, Risk, Connect 4, Operation. Have a Operation game out on display so kids that have never played Operation can play it. Think about that section when Christmas comes along, all the cool things that you could give at Christmas. Another section, and this would like really help expand, so it wouldn't be like a one trick pony, is a whole art section. And so like me and other artists could do paintings. We could do retro paintings that look like they were done in the 70s. If somebody had a office or a studio that was decorated in the 70s, these would be paintings that they could hang up and it would match their mid-century modern furniture or their groovy retro avocado green chair, or, you could have all these really cool pop art paintings, abstracts, and things like that. You could have a section of pottery. Remember all the different pottery, especially ashtrays. I remember in the 70s in all the pottery classes I had we were always making ashtrays, a whole ashtray section, and macramé. Think how fun it would be to have a little macramé section of, you could have somebody out there that's making macramé, or you could have even little macramé area or classes, or somebody in the store could make macramé owls and sell them in there. I think that would be super cool. Let's see what else. I think you kind of are. Hopefully, you guys are kind of getting, what I'm saying here. And again, the real reason of the store, not necessarily to actually sell items, but it would be just to create an experience. Would it be, if you did it really, really well and you did it right, could it be an experience for people that, I'm trying to think of, like, we just went down to Dallas, and Staten was talking about there was a car museum, and in that car museum they had a lot of old vehicles, 60s, 70s, 80s, but even other years. And so, it's almost kind of a destination. So I think if you had a store or a fun shop that was so cool, I know that when we go to Florida and we go to Disney, there's an area called Disney Springs, and they've got a Ron John surf shop in there. And it's a surf shop, but it's a destination. You almost want to come back with a T-shirt, and I do. I come back with Ron John T-shirts and stickers. So this Zoinkies Fun Shop, Retro Fun Shop, we would have Zoinkies Retro Fun Shop T-shirts. So you would come just to get the T-shirt and the window sticker for your car. And another thing is, unfortunately, we're not on Route 66, but you guys could come to Enid by way of Route 66, some of you. So that would be kind of cool to do that. But then we could have these big, like, have a yearly festival, a Groove Fest, or I don't know, something where we invite some 60s, 70s, or 80s artists or bands or somebody to come perform, and everybody get together and have a really cool groove fest or something. Man, I think that would be cool. So what are you guys thinking? Let me know. Let me know what you're thinking about this whole Zoinkies retro fun shop idea of mine. And again, would it be something? And another thing I've completely forgot is Todd and I could we could have a little area to do our podcast. That could be our podcast studio. We could have an area behind glass, and, maybe one day we start, 70s Buzz as a daily radio station where we, for certain hours during the day, we pretend like we're DJs from the 70s and we play only 70 songs on some radio station, but we're there live and people could come see us, or they could just come see us record the podcast. And, then we got a section for people that come and want to be on the podcast, and we could interview them. And so there'd be this whole thing with the podcast as well, the 70s Buzz podcast. So I could tie all of these cool things in together. I want to do art. I want to do T-shirts. I think it'd be cool to have a retro retail shop. We're still doing the podcast. It's just kind of this whole cool vibe of everything all dumped into one thing that I think might be kind of cool. I guess you could, I don't know that I would want to do this, but you could even have like a little counter, with stools, like an old fun, counter in a diner or whatever. And not really have to, you wouldn't maybe not have like a grill where you had to have like a full vent and grill, but you could do milkshakes. You could probably figure out some foods from the 60s, 70s, and 80s that you didn't really have to deep fry somehow. I don't know. I just think that might be kind of cool, is having the little diner with the stools where people could just come in and get a cold drink. You'd have cool ice, like the pellet ice or shaved ice from back in the day. Man, how cool would that be? So, again, let me know what you guys think. Totally dumb idea, or hey, that's kind of cool. It might work kind of idea. I mean, you'd put it in an old retro looking building, brick building. It would just be just a cool place, cool vibe. It'd be cool to have a building where you had like a garage door or two garage doors where you could open it up and let the air in, in the summertime. Even maybe have an area where people could ride skateboards, test out their skateboards or banana seat bike out there. You could even have a wall where they could play dodgeball, tetherball. You could have all kinds of fun stuff outside of the store. The Zoinkies Retro Fun Shop. Is that what I'm thinking about calling it? Yeah, so again, you guys, let me know what you think. Is this a crazy, crazy, crazy idea? Would it go over well? I mean, with social media, and I mean, we're to the point where, I'm Generation Jones, I'm 63. This, the whole group of people that grew up in the late 60s, all throughout the 70s and the early 80s, we're in our 60s and heading to 70s, and, well, late 50s through early 70s. And, it's kind of like almost do it now or you're not going to be able to do it. So, would you go? I mean, if there was this super duper cool store somewhere, would it be, if you guys were going on vacation, would it be somewhere you think you might add to your list if you're driving across the country, if you're going down Route 66? Would it be worth getting off Route 66 to drive up to Enid? I'm trying to think of where, Route 66 goes through Tulsa. So you could basically, when you get to Tulsa, if you're coming from the east, you could just leave Tulsa, go 412 and come to Enid, and then go down to Oklahoma City and back on Route 66. We could create this Route 66 elbow where people going up and down Route 66 could zip over to Enid. But would it be worth that? And then, Enid's got some cool stuff, a great square downtown and events. And so it's not like you would just be coming, for that. I think, you could probably find some other things to do here in Enid, with some of the events. And we got tons of hotels. And then you've got the whole area of northwest Oklahoma with the Little Sahara and the Great Salt Plains and the Black Mesa Mountains and the, just Bat Cave, Alabaster Caverns. I mean, we've got all kinds of cool other things. The Twister Museum up in Waukita, the Outsiders House over in Tulsa. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. Dillinger was filmed in Enid. I believe that was 73, I think. I'm trying to think if there's any. There might be a couple of those buildings left. A lot of them have been torn down, but you could, go to some of the areas where the movie Dillinger was filmed. So, okay, let me know. Curtis at curtistucker.com, Shags at shaggyduck.com. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, please. And somebody give me some feedback. Let me know if I'm crazy. Let me know if you want to invest. Let me know if you're living in Enid and you're listening to this, or somebody in Enid that has the perfect building. Contact me. Maybe we could, maybe this could be a joint venture where whoever has the building is part owner in the idea. And I don't know. I just think would be really cool. Oh, and then real quick, before I get off, I'm noticing all my guitars here. There could be a little music section with, retro guitars that you could throw in there. Might be kind of fun. So anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I appreciate you guys. Love you. See ya.